There's a lot of important stuff to talk about, but let's get to silly stuff first because I was just talking about the fact that there was a time in professional football when coaches tended, not all of them, but many of them, needed the cart. They needed to be taken from one place to another. The trend seems to be ridiculous BMIs now amongst all of you. Is it like, do you have an internal competition in that regard? Because once upon a time, there were fat coaches. And I mean no offense by that. They were just bigger, right? There's not very many of you left. So what's that all about? Is that a plan?
It is not a plan, and I can tell you that I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that I have not worked out since camp started. I think I'm down 5-6 pounds.
Oh, really?
Stress,
right.
Stress of running a training camp, and I'll tell you, you know what? It's not anything that I want to compete for because my body will not hold up between my back and standing around all day. Right. Trust me, I feel it, but luckily we got you set up here in a good spot.
It's a great spot.
I like the fact
this is
that
an
we got
outstanding
you right
spot.
here.
Yeah, it's a very good spot. It's not always the easiest to figure out like what's happening out there because sometimes we can see the plays, sometimes we can't. And there is I think you know this from a media standpoint, especially the people who have to cover this team daily.
Yep.
I kind of feel for them because they get accused of making too much out of a given play. But in their defense, they got to fill the pages, right?
Yeah.
They got to fill the tweets. And so I think all of us, even those especially, like I said, who cover every day, that's the challenge, is trying to figure out what to process, what matters, and what doesn't. You're the coach, so you're in a very different position. So the assumption is you're watching stuff that's very different than what the obvious stuff might be.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I think the deal should be as long as we hold off on some of the stat counting in the spring.
Yes.
Good. I understand that, folks. Look, people have the alternative would be nobody cares about what's going on out here, and we certainly don't want that. I like the fact that I think our media do a really good job of understanding, telling the stories of the players, but also the journeys that they're on, where they're at in their NFL careers.
Absolutely.
We've got the full gamut from a Harrison Smith all the way to some of our rookies, or JJ McCarthy in his second year, going through it. So I want the stories to get told. We got nothing to hide here. We're really proud of what we've built, Dan. But at the same time, it is the second day. We're not even in pads yet.
Sure.
There's a lot of things as a football team that I'm challenging these guys on a daily basis that, I told them just now after practice, believe it or not, 18 practices left until we cut down this roster. So if we think we can come out here one day and it's kind of hot. Yesterday we were in the indoor because of the lightning and it was a little muggy in there, so maybe we're in our feelings a little bit today. Well, guess what? 18 of these left until you make your mark, and we have to decide, which is going to be a tough decision. We have to decide the 53 guys we're going to put on this football team.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but I'm actually interested as a person who's been to many training camps over the decades, how decisions are made. Like, my understanding early at least is the Bears' approach has been we go early. We kind of beat the weather that way. We get in, we get out. And I'm assuming they may mix it up and there's other things they do over the course of the day. Seems like you guys like going late. So is there a method to that? Is there a thinking to that? As opposed to saying, all right, we don't have to deal with the heat at its worst if we get out here early. What's your thinking on that?
No, I think practice starts at 2:30, which it's designed to hopefully be the hottest points in the day. And I think – there's going to be some extreme to that throughout camp. Yeah. I don't know if you were here a couple years ago when we had Joints versus the Cardinals. I think it got up to 97, and it was humid, and that was a day where, maybe we cut back the work a little bit, and that was a team coming from Arizona that, agreed to cut back because of the heat.
Right.
But for the most part, we've got to use those days, and it's good for the guys to get out here and feel that a little bit. Get in the mode of you better do your work ahead of time, pre-practice. You better be hydrated because as this thing gets going with the sports performance, sports science world, if we're going to adhere to that, we've got to find our moments and our times where we can push to try to put some armor on these guys to handle 17-plus. Because, yes, training camp used to be different back in the day, but they were playing 12 or 16. We're going to continue to play more and more games, yet talk more and more about doing less to prepare the guys, and I have to find a way. I owe it to these players and the coaches to put together a training camp where when it's all said and done, we feel like we worked, we feel like we came together, we feel like schematically we're to the level to compete with some of these teams we're going to have to compete with, And then, oh, by the way, it's, getting some new players in every year. The way the NFL works, about pretty close to half our 90-man roster was not here last year. So it constantly becomes something I think about. How do we build the time in there, but then also challenge the guys to make use of this time to come together?
I'm not here to bring up painful memories, I promise. But whether it was coincidence or not, I'm flipping around, as I tend to do at night, and I hit the NFL Network.
Yep.
And the game they're replaying a bunch of games from the playoffs last year was the Rams game.
Yep.
Was your game against the Rams. And I did think of you because I was reminded of some things I almost forgot during that game. My guess is you never forget stuff when you're the head coach and you're embedded and you're invested. But where are you? I mean, how long does it take you, or did it take you, to get over, I know, a very disappointing game where you had very high aspirations for this team? Or is it always with you? Is that the nature of this business where it is still burning in you as you look back?
Yeah, I can. We've had 2 opportunities in 3 years in the playoffs, and I can vividly remember feelings pre, post, during some play calls, some plays that had a wild impact on maybe just the momentum of the football game, or in certain cases ultimately the final outcome of that game, and you remember it. I mean, you can't challenge people to look inward, and I know people, I think in this day and age so much of what we do is broadcasted, right? Every time we win, everything I tell my team is broadcasted, and that's okay, because like I said, I want our players and our fans to be a part of something that we're building here, that we want it to be special, all the way to hopefully realizing that goal of winning a world championship. But it can dangerously walk that line sometimes of, it's another cliche, it's another talking point for some folks to poke fun at. But, believe it or not, I believe everything I say. I care about these guys tremendously. And when you're going to tell people, look inward and let's find a way to really understand where we're trying to go as a football team, it better start with me, because the type of relationships I have with these players and coaches will be wildly diminished if I'm not authentic and truly meaning what I say. And I think in regards to that game, because, believe it or not, I don't know if it was as recent as maybe you saw it, but they had it on at a different time in the offseason, couldn't sleep, whatever it was. And, what followed it was the game when I was with the Rams, and we beat Tom Brady, comes back from, we thought we were going to be on the next documentary, and then Matthew Stafford hits Cooper Kupp down the middle to kick the game-winning field goal. And it was a great example of, as I told our team, the 1,000 little things that go on in a football game that you need to be championship worthy at, regardless of whether you're prepared for that moment or not. You're going to find out. But then I watched this other game where so many little things had to happen for us just to win a divisional game. And then ultimately the same thing happened next week in the NFC Championship game, and the same thing happened in the Super Bowl. But all of those things can be considered out of your control, so you better focus on the things you can. But, long answer, I know. But that question I could spend all day talking to you about, because the wins, Dan, they feel like, 3 out of 10s for a head coach. The losses, especially those.
So everybody says.
They can creep towards the 10,000 out of 10 of the misery scale, because when you care about people and you're trying to do it a certain way, you live with all of it. And that's what makes this job the best job in the world, but it can be hard.
The impression that I think a lot of us got after that game, based on some things you said, and even on the way you guys conducted your offseason and the acquisitions, the players you added, was an acknowledgement of, as much as this game is evolving offensively, certainly, to becoming obviously more of a passing league, there are some immutable traits that you have to still have as a team at the line of scrimmage, and you're kind of kidding yourself if you do not address those particular issues. Because, again, most of the major moves you guys made were along the offensive and defensive lines. Is that a fair appraisal? Is that how, when you guys are looking in and you're reevaluating everything and saying, how do we get to that next place, is that the message that you've conveyed by the moves you've made?
Yeah, and I would think about it like this. A lot of times we've, part of coaching and trying to schematically advance yourself through the season, through the ebbs and flows of some of the really good coaching you go against, is figuring out where you want to put the hard down, where you want the hard down to be. And for many of the circumstances we've been in and won some football games now, like we've found a way to win 13 and 14 in 2 separate seasons. And and should have won more in 2023, and a lot of that was my fault. And so when I look back on it, it's what's the next phase? It's figuring out a way for the line of scrimmage to be something that we can, against the upper tier of the NFL, we can find a way to own that a little bit more, working inside out. Now, we've got 2 really good tackles, and I don't want to take anything away from the guys that blood, sweat, and tears have poured it out there over the last 3 years in the interior, but we wanted to be real purposeful with what we tried to put together from a play style standpoint, body type, how that's going to work. And then on the defensive side, Flo has been, in a lot of ways we pride ourselves, and I don't want to speak for Flo, but what they do schematically some weeks amazes me, and what we've done in the past game and found ways to get a guy getting covered by 6 people open still, like that's all great, but sometimes football in its purest form, the longer you do it and the closer you get to maybe becoming what you want to be, you realize it can be a simple equation at that point. Can we get that yard when we need it? Can we stop somebody without having to send 6 or 7 forward defensively? Can we find a way to get those 3 or 4 or 5 yards and stack plays where maybe the job of the quarterback can be easier, the job of the world-class receiver can be easier because we're dictating in a different way than maybe we have at times over the first 3 years. But all of that's still in the garage. We just have to, become a little bit more complete with how we play football, in my opinion.
Does that mean calling plays differently with a slightly different philosophy?
I think it has to because, as any good play caller, you're constantly playing like the risk-reward proposition game in your head of percentages, right? Hey, what are they going to play based upon your study of that opponent, and what likelihood are you going to get exactly what you want to attack it? And then how much are you willing to risk you don't get what you want, or vice versa? What kind of negatives are you risking? So as a play caller in the run game, we've just got to be more efficient. How many more times in run or pass can we just be a little bit more efficient? And that might not be as exciting as a 15, 20-yard run. It might be 5 yards and being in a 2nd and 5 and having the whole playbook at our disposal. It might be understanding that, hey, we are going to be with these new rules, the kickoff rules, the starting position is going to start even further out, Dan. There could be more 4-down football across the whole league, and there's been a lot of it, even in these last 3, 4, 5 years. And not to be reckless, but we've got to build a defense on the other side that allows us to play that game too. So I feel very good about the roster we've put together. I can already see it kind of coming together from a standpoint of some really tough decisions, not only how we're going to build this thing personnel-wise, but who's going to make our football team. And then you got to build for depth as well, because as we know, that's been a huge discussion point internally here of how do we stay healthy at the critical spots that we need to. Kevin
O'Connell is kind enough to join us after practice today from the exclusive Fan Radio Network Perch. Let's get to JJ McCarthy. Here's what I think is interesting from a fan perspective, even a media perspective. On the one hand, it appears that you guys have put together a roster that you believe has great possibility right now. Not 2 years down the road, but now. And yet you are also asking a second-year quarterback who obviously missed all the time that mattered last year to be the guy as well. So my question is, what kind of a curve is it fair to grade him on? Because I think that's the disconnect is, as much as people want to say, new quarterback, young, it's going to take some time, I'm not sure anybody wants to hear it because they go, well, no, the team itself, the way they put these players together and as aggressive as you've been in the offseason, it feels like they want it right now. So does that mean, what kind of curve is it fair to grade JJ McCarthy on, given that he seems to have a lot of really good infrastructure around him immediately?
Yeah, I as far as, we're going to take a long look each and every week of how we best serve to the development process of what that curve looks like. I think it depends on what your understanding is of what you're actually seeing and what we're asking him to do, because I am wildly in favor of the quarterback development process involving more than just the quarterback. And I know it's been too much has probably been made of my opinions on these matters, but I will say that I believe you're supposed to put a really good football team around any quarterback that plays. When you have a younger player in this financial current NFL that we play in nowadays, you can do it a little bit more around that player with the young guy under contract for a certain amount of time before you inevitably have to start planning for what that will look like when he transitions to one of the more highly paid players on the team. what I would say is there's the football philosophy part of it. You heard me use that term hard down all the time. I think too many people in this league force the young quarterback to play the hard down. And it's hard enough as it is. There's no removing the difficulty of what playing the quarterback position is in the NFL. You can't hide from a 3rd and 7. You can't hide from a third and 8 at the 8. That's a quarterback down, right, wrong, or indifferent. I stand on the sidelines. JJ could have 4 defenders on him, out playing receiver. We could have an all-out play. That is a quarterback down. But what are we doing all the other times? What are we doing to put drives together, stack plays, marry the run and the pass? A whole lot of things that could sound cliche if we don't live it, breathe it, and do it for the player on a daily basis. And then remember, we drafted a player we hoped would hold himself to a standard that allows that arrow to stay pointed up regardless of result, especially early on, because we're trying to build a player here that can sustain for a long time in Minnesota.
You've talked about quarterback presence, and I don't know if you've already been around him enough to believe in it, but I'm as interested in you defining, as a guy who's about offense and about working with quarterbacks, how you define that term gets thrown around a lot. He's got presence. What does it mean to you? What is it you need to see to believe that quote-unquote presence exists?
Yeah, we gotta. There's the on-field component of it, handling moments. Handling. I know the term being at your best when your best is required. Well, you can artificially create that a little bit out here in some competitive periods, and give him certain information leading into the day that might not be ultra, comfortable. Heard it 1,000 times, but hey, can he remember those things and apply them in a critical moment that we can try to create? So there's one layer of it, and then there's the presence that I've been talking to our team about, the invisible presence in our building of just substance. And as you know, there's some quarterbacks around the league, without naming any names, like the authenticity and the realness of it and the infectious part of it, that you want to be around it, is a fine line for some guys. And he has found the way, in my opinion, in a really authentic way to be himself, to his love of football to come out in a really positive way. And I've seen players that I've gotten to know pretty well over the last 3 years around here respond to it in a way that is also authentic and real. And then you just try to stack days and put them in situations to grow right before all of our very eyes. And there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. I'd rather people continue to ask me the question about JJ McCarthy and the ups and downs of it than ask him about it, because I want him focused on being about the right stuff, the process, and continuing to grow and learn and worry about the next down that he's got to go manage and play quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
Can you help us clear up one thing that that's still kind of gnaws at me, even though you could say it's now irrelevant? And this is your opportunity. Obviously, the media jackals are constantly evaluating you. They're questioning what you say, what you do. It's just part of the deal. This is your opportunity to question us a little bit. And it was a story that evolved over the offseason that indicated that you guys were kicking the tires on Aaron Rodgers. And there were a lot of people, a lot of fans who texted and said, I don't believe you guys. I think the media is blowing this up. It wasn't that big a deal. And yet there's a lot of reporters I trust who say they think there was real conversation about that, even though ultimately you guys decided to go another direction. So can you clear that up? Did we blow that story up and out of proportion, or was it a fair offseason story that is part of how you got to where you are right now?
I totally understood that. I thought that's a good thing, I guess, that there was a lot of different directions I thought you could go with that to set the record straight. But you know what, there was I've said it on record, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I've known Aaron Rodgers for a long time, and it was a circumstance where there were some conversations personally between him and I, and the idea of him, possibly either wanting to or becoming a Minnesota Viking. We had, had a quarterback depart in free agency that won 14 games, and a young player coming off of an injury. What would that look like? All those things. It was dialogue between, a player that I have the utmost amount of respect for, both for Aaron as a player and the relationship that I've built with him going back a long time, believe it or not, to even when I played this game very below average. But ultimately, I think, everything worked out the way it was supposed to. We always went into this offseason even before it ever started, wondering how do we put the best possible team in place to ultimately uplift who's playing quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And when we selected JJ McCarthy in the first round of the draft, the idea of what this team was going to look like was that path was set in motion. And now we just get to, live it on a daily basis and live the highs and the lows. And hopefully, we got a lot of confidence in how we handle the position around here and ultimately what that looks like with JJ, as our guy. I'm really excited to get to do it with him every day. He's having a blast doing it, Dan.
I think we saw. I think Justin Gard, my producer, did a play-by-play on his interception today. I don't know if there was more than one. That's always the question. Is that a teachable moment kind of INT?
You and I are in the booth right now.
Okay. Well,
we're in the booth.
You're better at this
we're
than
watching
me.
it. We're watching it in real time. So we had Jordan Addison on a double move to the left, a core concept, a little bit of a double move.
Great, yeah.
He got rerouted, jammed at the line of scrimmage just a little bit too long for my liking.
Okay.
And JJ, his utmost confidence in Jordan to maybe get up on that safety and launch the ball down the field. He hung with it. One hitch too many.
Okay.
Had, I believe, it was either Lucky Jackson or Speedy Naylor coming over the middle, pretty open on an in-cut. He took one hitch too many, the left side kind of hanging with the, man, I want to impress Dan Barreiro with this double move touchdown.
Yeah.
He should have just, and he immediately, the best thing about JJ is he said, I should have got off of it much earlier, and then, he came back a couple plays later, similar type of look, and made a great decision and threw a great ball right back there to Addison. So one of those things where you define learning, teachable moments in practice, likely something I'll probably go over with JJ and maybe even in the team meeting later because, there's some – Harrison Smith got his hands on a football for about the 450th time in his career.
Two last quick things. One, well, actually, I'll just finish with one here. For your off season, well, you know what? Peter Bursic had. I will say one other thing about your quarterback, and then we'll get to the last one.
Yep.
Yesterday, I said to him, Pete, how much do you want to see JJ McCarthy run in this offense? And he said, none. He said, I want him to throw. I want him to use his legs simply to buy time to throw. To me, there's got to be a little bit of a middle ground there based on mobility and what that can do to maybe get a 4-yard play to the sidelines as opposed to 2nd and 16. But what is your own philosophy on what are your guiding principles with him in that regard?
Yeah, I think, he never had a documented 40 time or anything like that through the draft process, but he's a good athlete. And, he got hurt on a scramble type play where he was trying to make a move in the open field. And there could be layer upon layer of why that happened.
Right.
But what I would say is I think he's going to be able to use his legs naturally as the play gets exhausted. He's got some juice. He's got the quickness to avoid some of these, unbelievable athletes that are rushing the quarterback nowadays. And then I do believe, you can go back really almost anybody that, we've ever coached. There's been a situational feel to maybe activating the quarterback as a runner when it's to our advantage. I think there's always a layer of it. You can do it with some of the players that are playing the quarterback position in the league. You have an advantage showing up to the stadium with their athleticism. But then there's a schematic side. Are they really accounting for that player? Is it going to be a reaction late in the down for them to react to the quarterback maybe running? And then, they are protected by some rules that if they handle themselves properly and I guess maturely, you should say, when they get either near the sideline or the ability to slide and protect themselves, you can just get up and go get in the huddle. And, we have a phrase around here, can you steal me 1 or 2 first downs a game? And that's the critical side of it. Maybe what Pete was talking about of, maybe on some downs, because we get some pretty exotic man coverages to Justin. Hey, there's a guy pressing him, a safety over the top, and then they're worried about Addison, maybe a double there. Is TJ getting – but what they don't ever account for is the quarterback. So Vikings fans will see sometimes this year where he takes off and can get us a good chunk of yardage. Sam was able to do that, as we were able to kind of recognize it throughout the season and use his legs. And that's part of I don't think you need to be a true runner at the position, but if you've got the ability – to steal some yards and move the football, in a way where Coach O'Connell gave me almost said a bad word there. Coach O'Connell gave me a bad play, and I found a way to make a first down out of it. You'll see a big smile on my face.
The most relaxing moment of your off season?
Oh, man. It definitely wasn't my son's Little League. That's probably more stressful when he's on the bump than anything. Probably just we spent a couple weeks back in San Diego, and I got out fishing with my dad. Just me, him, and the boys a couple days, and it was relaxing because we didn't catch anything. But
but you can get away then and kind of escape all of it a little bit at least?
Yeah, it was, I had not been home, believe it or not, since that's where I received the phone call last year about Kyrie. So being back there and not receiving a phone call of any kind like that allowed me to relax. But, Dan, it's hard to explain, and I don't know if people will be able to rationalize this, but you really do feel like you've got 53, and in this case, this time of year, 91 kids, and I care about my coaching staff the same exact way, and everybody in this building. That's the way we're trying to do things around here, and so I don't relax a whole lot.
No,
but
I get that.
It's part of my personality to expect the best out of people.
Well, beyond that, and I'm sure you've been around here now long enough to me, it's the burden of the significance to people of this franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no team in this town professionally that's on this level, on the Vikings level. It's just a fact. It's part of it's the nature of pro football being as popular, but part of it is the way it's ingrained. The Vikings have ingrained themselves into people's heads over the decades. You got to be feeling that.
My favorite thing to do, and it's a lot sometimes, but when I get out and about and get to really engage with on any given day at a Little League tournament, I might see 50 or 60 fifth or sixth graders. But then I might see Grandpa who will tell me, where he was when the Vikings either lost this game or that game. And I'll normally immediately bring up Bud Grant and how much he meant to me. And they'll have a great Bud story. And it's one of the best parts of this job is engaging with our fan base. I think we got the best fans in the NFL. And I know a lot of coaches say that. But until you've experienced other places and then come here, you can really start to feel it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Best of luck this season, and hopefully we'll catch up somewhere down the road.
Enjoy your
I
Pellegrinos.
will do that for sure.
They're
Thanks,
getting
man.
warm right now.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.